Welcome to the NEMSIS v3 implementation call. Today is February 12th. We appreciate you being with us this morning. I'm going to go ahead and move to the full agenda. If everyone could take a minute and just make sure that their microphones are muted for now. We do encourage questions and comments and participation, but until you're ready to ask those questions or to jump in, if you could mute, that'll help whoever's presenting at the time not have as much background noise. Also, please feel free to use the chat feature. Bridget will be watching that for us. And as those come up, we will ask those questions of the presenter as well. Let's go ahead and start with Monet. She's going to go over the 2019 closure of the data set for us. Monet, you wanted to share your screen, didn't you?
Sorry, thank you. Can you hear me now, Bridget?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Greetings, everyone, and Happy New Year to anyone that I have not yet spoken with this new year. I want to express my appreciation for your diligent efforts to get your 2019 data into the NEMSIS warehouse. For several state managers and vendors, this has meant fixing a multitude of agency demographic files, and I want to thank you for your responsiveness to receive my emails and my phone calls that I've made to your offices over the last few months. To date, we can boast of 32 million records in the NEMSIS warehouse, and we have announced this on several platforms of our intention to close the research data set by Friday, this coming Friday, February 14th at midnight. I just wanted to show you something based on the data submission dashboard. Currently, of the 46 states and territories that are submitting, we have about 36 states and territories that are in the green, and that's this first box here where you see in failed submissions. So there are 36 states that have absolutely no failed submissions. There are about 4 states that this color is going to be yellow, which means you have between 1 and 2% of failed submissions. And then for about 6 states, this color is red, and that means you have about more than 5% of submission failures. Now, we have done an excellent job bringing the numbers down from almost 200,000 failed submissions to currently about 60,000. And I just want to remind you to look at this report. If you have questions about this report, please call and ask us. I would like to say that a lot of these failed submissions are a result of missing or incomplete demographic agency files. However, some of these failures are also related to XML validation errors. The way you would find that information is you can go to the submission summary detail tab here, and you're going to scroll to the bottom, and it will indicate what type of failures you're experiencing. I also just want to say that the good news is that we have many of these errors being corrected on a daily basis, and it's very possible that if everyone could give a last push to get their data into the system, we could potentially close out to 2019 with 34 million records. Please let me know if you have any questions or if you need any assistance. I will reach out again to several states this week, just asking for that last push to complete these demographic files. Thank you. Do you have any questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Monet. Appreciate that. Next, we'll jump in with Josh Legler. Josh, do you need the screen? Do you want me to leave that open to you or put it back onto the agenda?
Yeah, leave it open to me, and I will share the screen in a minute. The first agenda item I have is just an update on the rewrite of the Schematron rules for version 3.4. The draft rewrite has been prepared and will shortly be committed to a feature branch of the NEMSIS public Git repository. And it will sit there for the next month or so. That gives all of you a chance to review those rewritten Schematron rules, test them out in systems, try them, kick the tires, make sure everything's good, report any issues that you find. So I anticipate in the next couple of days that we'll have that in the Git repository for your review. And then we'll let it sit there for about a month, and then we'll finalize those Schematron rule rewrites in mid-March. That's also when we will update the test cases that are published in the Git repository that demonstrate passing and failing cases for each of those validation rules. So that's just a heads up on the overall timeline, targeting mid-March for releasing those rules. Those rules are less strict than the current rules. And so we'll probably do a deployment approach where we deploy them nationally first, and then deploy them at the state level, and then finally at the local level. So since they become more lax or less restrictive, then that would make sure that you know, if someone deploys it first at the local level before it's been deployed at the state or national level, then you could potentially get some reports being kicked back for validation failures. So that's the approach, and just an update on that. Any questions on that schedule for the Schematron update? Okay, great. Next, just a quick update again on the performance measures service. So in the last call, we mentioned that Safety 01 and Safety 02 were added to the performance measures service. We had a glitch with the first data pull on those. And so it was a couple days after that call 2 weeks ago that we finally got those stabilized. But they are available now. So either via web services, you could run the numbers for Safety 01 and Safety 02. Or via the dashboard that is available through the View Reports, Public Reports menu. And you'll see Safety 01 and Safety 02 in that dashboard now as well. Additionally, we have updated the documentation. And so if we look at the list of performance measures, Safety 01 and Safety 02 have been added to the list of documented measures there. So you'll see how those are calculated. Both of these measures are using the new NEMSIS specifications, which is different from the original EMS Compass specifications. So that's the performance measures. Any questions there? Okay. All right, I have one additional agenda item that wasn't on the agenda sent out, but has come up in recent discussions and wanted to just see if anyone has an answer for us. I'm showing you the NEMSIS 3.5 pre-testing cases, one of those test cases. And in this particular area, you're looking at the medical device information. So in the test case HTML file, we give you this information that needs to make its way into your software and then be exported by your software in an XML structure that matches the kind of gold standard XML that we provide with the test case. The recommendation has come in, or suggestion, that it'd be nice to actually provide you with a medical device data file as opposed to something that you would hand enter into your software. Indeed, medical device information, the intent of this section of the standard is that it will come from a medical device and not that it will be hand entered by an EMT. So we would love to do that. We would love to provide a medical device data file that you could load into your software to demonstrate your support for the eDevice section. Our question to you is, are you aware of an open, non-proprietary standard for medical device data that we could provide that file in? So we need to pick a format to provide the file in, and we need to pick a format that's vendor neutral with an open standard. Of course, there was the NEMSIS Med Device Dataset standard, which was not adopted. So, you know, we could always use that standard, but it probably means that you would do some development that you've not yet done in order to actually process data in that standard. So is anyone aware of an open, vendor-neutral, non-proprietary data standard that we could provide the device data in for these test cases?
Closest one I know of is the Zoll one, but it's proprietary, but it's at least readable. The other option is just to provide eDevice's XML potentially.
Okay. Yeah, which would essentially be like the med device data set.
Right. But eDevice being an active, standard. So
Okay. Any other anyone else aware of an open standard that we could use here? All right. Well, I don't know what we're going to be able to do in terms of revamping this piece of the test cases. Again, we really do expect that this is data that would come in from a medical device, not through hand entry. But in the end, we have to have some way of testing that your software is able to export, include this data in an export. So we have to provide something in a test case. We may have to continue with this approach. We'll see what we can do. Any final comments on that?
Yeah, have you contacted the device manufacturers, Philips, Zoll, et cetera, to see if they'd join us in this regard?
No, we just discussed this a few days ago. I'm sure Zoll is on the call. I don't know if anyone from Zoll would have any comments.
I mean, it'd be wonderful if they would join us and standardize the protocol.
Mm-hmm.
This is Adam. I guess technically under the Zoll umbrella, although I have very little to do with the code data. But I'll bring it up to them, see if we have anything. Otherwise, I was with David on the suggestion just using the NEMSIS eDevice or eMed device data set, whatever it's called. I'm not sure how many people were actually implemented that, but at least it's a standard.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, that's the end of my topics. So, Julianne, back to you.
I was just going to say the fact that eMed device exists probably points to the fact that there isn't a standard, or else.
Yeah, I know.
I know
Yeah.
Zoll did publishes XSDs for their data format, at least, but if you provided like both or all three, so you have the HTML file and and the XML, then that's probably as much as you could do, unless you somehow did all three of the major EKG vendors. I don't think anybody would object to that, but that's kind of a lot of work on you guys, I think.
Yeah, and we have to have a way of actually generating that data, short of actually having one of their devices in hand and pushing the buttons on it.
Or I mean, could they help you with that potentially? I don't think
maybe
a project around this. Kind of my impression of it, but that the shortest path I see to meet what you're asking for is probably to have 3 device files, one for each of the major ones.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for those thoughts. Okay, Julianne.
All right. Next up on our list is Laurel. Do you want to share your screen, Laurel, or are you just
I sure do.
going through okay.
I'll probably talk a little bit first before I grab the screen share. But
yep.
Yeah, so the first topic I have is the compliance testing update. So everyone's been asking when these resources are going to be available, and the answer is very soon. I know we're a little bit late here, but we wanted to make sure that we get everything in there and that it's all done right. And I would expect that we will have something available by the end of February, and people will be able to start completing compliance testing in earnest. At this point right now, the test cases are available on the website, and if you would like to go through your software and start implementing the test cases, testing with the schematrons and doing all of that sort of pre-work that you should be doing before you come for compliance testing, that's all available. So, okay, I'm ready to grab the screen share, I think.
Okay.
Can't just take it, I have to ask. Okay, so on the NEMSIS website, under technical resources and compliance, this is where you're gonna find those test cases. Under compliance for 3.5, there's the testing guide for collect systems, testing guide for receive and process system, and then the pre-testing package. So these testing guides have a really thorough, clean walkthrough for what kind of testing you want to be doing. And this pre-testing package is an exact, essentially, copy of everything that's in the active testing package. So you know exactly what kind of test cases you're going to see and exactly what sort of questions I'm going to be asking you. The questions will be different in active testing, but they'll be the same type of questions. So if you've gone through the testing guide for the type of system you are, and you've gone through the pre-testing package, you should just fly through active testing. As soon as we have the services up, we can start scheduling those appointments for those active testing calls. But my expectation would be sometime right around the end of this month for services available. Does anyone have any questions about compliance testing for 3.5? All right. Hopefully lots of you are ready and we can start moving through that and getting ready to collect that data. The agenda's gone. What was my next topic, Julianne? I already forgot.
Your next topic is the discussion of listing of a product parent company.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so on the compliance software testing status page, I'm sure you're all familiar with this. We made some changes recently to include this participation and recertification information, but we had a recent request from a stakeholder that we not only list the software company, but we list the parent company for a software company. So for example, pick on Zoll a little bit in EMS charts. Here's EMS charts. Nowhere does it say that EMS charts is owned by Zoll. So should we be including this information somewhere in this list? Should we add a column that indicates where a company is owned by another company? And if we were to do that, how can we maintain this information? Would software vendors be willing to share this information with us? Sometimes we know when a company is owned by another company, but sometimes we find out much later through other means. So what are feelings on whether we should list this information?
I'm not quite sure what you gain from that, honestly.
Yeah, I can't speak for everyone at our umbrella of a service, but I mean, I don't see anything negative about it. I don't know who made the request. Maybe they have more detail.
I'll be honest with you, I don't remember exactly where the request came from.
Okay. I mean, I don't think we have any objection.
Well, you provide the link, so if you provide the link, if somebody's that curious, they can click on it and it goes. And if they want to advertise it, then you know.
I don't know. I don't see Zoll on here, so.
Right in the middle of the page.
It's right there, yeah.
Where?
The small gray box, the black border.
Oh, I can't wait
there it is.
to kill this site.
Yeah, tiny little notice right there. Yeah, I mean, it says you're gold compliant. I think that was a version 2 thing.
This site is not, that front marketing page is dragging from golden hour days.
Hey, on Adam's to-do list.
No, not mine.
Website.
I tried to kill it once before.
Sorry to pick on you, Adam.
No, that's not picking. It's no worries.
So, I mean, if vendors don't mind this, and if enough other stakeholders think it's important, we can try and track down this information and list it where we know it. Other thoughts?
This is
Just
Josh.
wonder-
It can be a bit of a rabbit hole sometimes. Like Zoll is actually owned by Asahi Kasei.
I don't even
Who
know
knows
what you
how
said
far?
there.
Yeah, how far it keeps going. So
That's true.
That's why I don't have any objection, but I would suggest you just leave it to the applicant to provide what company name they want to furnish.
That's been our policy so far, is for companies to self-identify who they are.
Exactly, and I think that's appropriate.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that said, if any of you want to send me an email and say, change my company name to Zoll EMS charts or whatever, I'm happy to do that, as long as your software version is not significantly changing and your software itself is not significantly changing.
So my question would still be, what does that help with? And then the second one is, does it create the possibility for confusion where if you have like some older software system that was purchased and is not compliant, and now you're kind of the potential to conflate two of them. So company has their main software product is compatible, or maybe their one they bought is compatible, but the other one is not. I kind of see the potential for confusion there.
Yeah, this is quite, I think we would rather keep it the way it is now, and then I like the idea of just leaving it up to the company to indicate how they want to be most clearly recognized by customers. Perhaps that's just the best way to go.
This is Julianne. Where that request came from was directly from a state, and I think it was in regards to working with some of the software companies that were difficult to communicate with. So I think that's where that idea was coming from. But before we chase that down any further, we certainly wanted input from the vendors.
This is Danny from West Virginia, and the only thing I can see where the problem would be is if maybe they were having an issue with a contract or something. That's
Yeah, I'd hope when they went to the contract, they know that product B is owned by vendor A as opposed to vendor B.
you would think. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess your other scenario looking here, without dragging the conversation on too much more, but so we have the software company and it links to it. And I know when we filled out the forms, we had primary contact, right? So like when you go to the states page, it has the name and email. Maybe that would help as far as like who to actually contact at EMS charts, Zoll, Stryker, etc.
I know some states would find that valuable because I have been fielding more requests lately for vendor contact information.
Wow.
But, from a, I suppose, ethical standpoint, though, when vendors fill out that information, they have not given me permission to share it. And yep. I don't want to be like just freely distributing your information, posting your email address.
Addendum to
without your consent to do so. That doesn't seem very fair.
Sure.
I would certainly be annoyed if you guys posted my email address all over the web.
Oh, I did already. Yeah.
I'll take it down. Sorry.
This is Ann in Arizona. I don't really have an opinion on listing the parent company, but as far as contact information for vendors, I would actually really like that. I would like something where if we could click on something for a vendor, we could find the proper place they would like to direct us if we have questions. A lot of times I contact like the sales rep or I contact you guys, the people on the call right now, but maybe that's not where you would like me to start necessarily if it's not a question that is necessarily like, it's not a technical question. So
I mean, worst case, we have like,
I would
EMS
love to have
charts
that available
help desk,
easily.
Yeah,
I would love to have that where we can click and we don't have to necessarily also quiz NEMSIS who we should be contacting. I don't see why that would be a problem as long as the vendors could provide that. And like I said, I know NEMSIS you don't have to take responsibility for the fact if no one tells you updated contact information. But it would be helpful to me. I Google too, but sometimes I end up in the most random places. So it's just my 2 cents.
Laurel, do you want to send around just that, like an addendum to that whole compliance thing? Like here, public contact information, check here if you want it shared.
I mean, that's something that we could look into doing, but I'll be honest with you. I don't retain all of your contact information forever. And I don't maintain a list of vendor contact information. Frankly, as I was telling Julianne this morning, because this is a sort of a free self-service process for compliance testing, I really don't ever have an intention of going to a vendor, because vendors need to come to me to be tested. That's sort of the process we've been running under for a long time now. So I don't really have a list myself. I'd be happy to start compiling one, and when people come for 3.5 testing, we can add that as a question. Do you have a public contact information that you want to share with states? Maybe that's something we could put in the Google group, which I would love to encourage as many people as possible to join. If states have information they want to share with vendors, they can also post to the Google group. I mean, NEMSIS does it all the time. Hey, here's the new state resources we posted, but there's no reason why a state couldn't also send an email out to the Google group. Hey, by the way, New York has a new Schematron. It goes effective on this date. You can find it here, here, or here. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to all use that Google group more as a place to share information.
This is Anne again. Could you just do it for the ones that are listed as compliant? I usually just not necessarily people, you're not reaching out to vendors who are thinking about compliance or haven't, but just the ones who have passed compliance. Because I see about the Google group, which I haven't used, so that's a great idea, but sometimes there's stuff where it's about a particular client and I don't want to share that on the Google group.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So I can try, but some of these companies that applied for compliance originally under 3.3.4 or were compliant on 3.4 in, 2014, I just don't have any information anymore. I didn't even test them, and it wasn't really kept. So it would be a project, but we could sort of try and compile as much information as possible and get in contact with as many companies as possible. I mean, for most of you, the ones that are coming to these calls and are and that we talk to regularly, it'll be easy. But some of the companies that we don't hear from as often, I might not be able to find anything. So
and
it's sort of the obstacle there.
This is Clay. I think this is a good idea. We'll spend some time on this and see if we can put together something that would just be more handy for the states to be able to make contact with those vendors that are active with us. I think we can put that together pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly think that it just probably wouldn't be a 100% complete list. There's a lot of compliant vendors. Yeah,
we'll make it work though, I think.
Yeah, no, and I like I said, this would just be like a nice perk. It would be just nice, but I totally get if you can't get everybody or if someone's disappeared off the face of the earth. That's fine too.
There will be different audiences. I think a lot of people come to this page because they're an EMS agency trying to decide what to buy. So for them, maybe it is the sales contact. State data managers come here to check if a product is compliant, and they probably need like a support contact or even state level support contact.
Well, that opens up a whole question that's been out there about having report cards on vendors as well. And should or shouldn't that be displayed?
Yeah, I think what we can do though is on like this the state page, a state data manager's page, maybe provide a document there, keep an active document there. So we'll work on this. I think this is a great idea. We'll work on this and see if we can provide that as a resource that's helpful.
Would you tie compliance to that potentially, and maybe just try to help that stay up to date?
We'll talk about it internally. Yeah, thanks, David.
Okay, so that went a little deeper than just parent companies, but thanks everyone for your feedback there. Next topic is the NEMSIS support materials page. This will be fun because it's not about compliance. So we added a new page to the website to contain some support materials. So I'm sure, as all of you are aware, under technical resources, we have a page called Guides and Usage, which is where we keep our white papers. Everyone on the call knows that, right? Yeah, you've clicked on all these links before, lots of stuff. So we added a new page that's kind of similar, but it's more geared towards your non-technical users. So it's under Using EMS Data, and it's called Outreach and Education Materials. So go ahead and open that up. And so far there's not a ton here, but this is where we're going to keep all of our really cool, simple fact sheets and infographics that are designed to help non-technical users, providers in many cases, understand different aspects of NEMSIS. So these are things that we sort of envisioned that a state could grab and disseminate to help the actual clinicians maybe understand what's going on in their software. So we have a couple on 3.5, the changes to e-disposition. And it's just very, very clear, simple stuff to sort of explain what's going on here. So in version 3.4, we had this one element, and now it's these 4 elements, and here's why. Here's what's going on in the difference between them all. You know, just sort of really clear description in layman terms of what's going on here. I'll show you another one here. Harmonizing NEMSIS and CARES in 3.5. This just sort of explains what changes we made and why, what the history is. So there's right now 5 different fact sheets there that are sort of available for anyone to grab and use however they see fit. We plan on adding some more stuff to this page as we build more resources for this type of audience. All right, does anyone have any questions here before I move on to my final topic? Okay, my last topic before you guys are done with me for today is the 2020 maintenance schedule. So we didn't post this at the beginning of the year because, oops, Laurel forgot. But our maintenance is always on the second Tuesday and Wednesday of the month. So we updated the schedule for 2020. You can find this by going to the NEMSIS FAQs page, which is in the footer of every page. And right underneath the FAQs is the downtime schedule. It's always Tuesdays and Wednesdays, always the second Tuesday and Wednesday of every month. Some months there is no maintenance. When systems are down, you will receive lots and lots of notices about that via the Google group. So if you're not in the Google group, you should definitely join. We're currently in the February maintenance window, and as far as I am aware, we have no maintenance going on. So if there's going to be any maintenance in the future, you'll see an email, but next month is March 10th and 11th, etc. Does anyone have any questions about the maintenance schedule for 2020? No questions. Great. Okay. I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Clay. Thanks, everyone.
Clay, did you want to share your screen, or should I just go back to the agenda?
Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen if I could. I'm going to just go ahead real quickly and talk a little bit about the current interest in travel-related custom elements. So there, of course, is increasing interest here, and we had a technical glitch associated with our V3 custom element library associated with moving to 3.5. That's now been fixed. So I just wanted to remind each of the vendors and also the state data managers that if you wanted to go look at what states have done in regards to travel-related questions for EMS providers to query, just go to technical resources. Of course, here's the National Custom Element Library. Click here to access the library, and then it'll bring up all the states that have submitted custom elements to us. And probably the best way to find the most applicable elements would be to type in travel. And then you can see what states have done and related to this question. a couple of points just quickly to make is we would love to have any states that have custom elements that they haven't yet committed to the library, would love to have those here, because I think this feature on the NEMSIS website is used a lot, not only by states that are looking to build custom elements, but by researchers and federal governments looking to find specific elements that are a little bit outside the standard, and who's collecting those and what are the definitions associated with those elements. So, for example, CDC went here just the other day looking to see if there was a specific, they had a specific topic in mind and wanted to check to see if any states had shared that interest and built a custom element. So this is a valuable place to put them, and also a valuable place to go to find these elements. The other kind of thought I wanted to share, maybe have a little bit of discussion regarding this. We have certainly heard from a number of states that are interested in this idea, want to see what folks are doing, have been asking vendors what they've implemented so far. I just wanted to check with the vendors. Are you getting lots of questions from states or from your individual customers at the agency levels regarding the addition of these elements, travel-related elements? Okay, well, if there's not as much clamor about this as we were kind of anticipating, we were going to maybe talk about the idea of trying to standardize an approach kind of across the country. Clearly, history has taught us that this is going to be a reoccurring issue, and maybe what we need to do is come up with a national approach to recent travel outside of the United States.
Clay, I'll speak up here. We have gotten a few requests here recently, just sort of on what a timeline would be. And I think if it was standardized, it would be helpful. And I'm actually not sure why we didn't just put it in the 3.5 standard when we had an opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Keenan.
Hi, Clay. Yeah, this is Jen. I was going to say the same thing. We've had some interest in whether or not we're collecting it. But then the flip side is whether or not they can get it, because has their Schematron been updated with the custom elements or not, is the other flip side of the question.
Oh, right.
So, like, we can collect it. It might be in our software, but if they haven't updated their state system to get it, they won't get the information.
Yeah, Jen, good point.
This is Ann in Arizona. From a state perspective, we've been looking at using these, and to be honest, just like you said, I think just like someone else said, I don't know why we didn't add this to 3.5. It's always hindsight 2020, right? I'm like, this is a good question because it's going to come up even if not now, later, but whatever. And we have talked about promoting it to agencies to use, but this, I don't know how many other vendors have built it. The IT elements are the image trend elements, so I know obviously our users that also use that standalone system, since we as a state use it, we could get it. But, and this is a vendor call, so I guess the question is, like, are you guys looking at potentially building these anyway? Because we, unless we have emergency mandate from the governor or something, we tend to not just make people build things. The last time we did is because we had a statute that was put in place. So I'm just wondering, are vendors building this one anyway? Are they building it?
It's actually part of the recertification process. Travel outside the U.S. So yeah, we have it at ours, and anybody who's recertified in the last year should have at least some implementation that they used. That maybe wouldn't be too much work to bring it into their product.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I did not realize that. I've missed some calls, so thank you.
Yeah, David, this is Clay. I think what you're saying is there's a test case that includes a custom element related to travel outside of the U.S., right?
Right, yeah. And it had to show up in the software system and all that stuff. So if they only built it for compliance, maybe it wouldn't be too much of a lift to put it into the main branch of their product.
It would make it easier to standardize so that you don't have one state saying, well, we want it in have you traveled in the last 30 days? Have you traveled in the last 6 months? Have you traveled? So that at least if it's standardized, everybody's asking the same question with the date range. That was what we've I've seen, at least in the last couple of years, between the two viruses that put this question out there, is that some of them wanted it. Well, have you done it in the last 21 days? Have you done it 30 days, 45 days? It's been random and different between some of the states. The standardization would help that.
And also, if we standardize the verbiage, we still have to figure out how to standardize the output, right? Because, the IT elements are, indicative of the image trend states. Are other vendors going to take those elements as they sit as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point, Ken. All right, any other comments related to this idea? These are really good comments. We have a data managers call coming up. We'll get a chance to discuss this with the larger group on that call, and it'll be great to have you and others have some comments here to talk about this. And then also the Office of EMS. Eric Cheney has also talked to us briefly about this as well. So if there's an idea that we need to provide a national kind of custom element approach to this, and I think we can move forward with that. We've now kind of initiated that idea with the work that we did for CMS and for the ET3 project. So I think we have a mechanism in place to do this. Any other questions before I turn it back over to Julianne?
Yeah, hi, this is Nick, Image Trend. So even within our own IT elements, as you see on the screen, IT exam 070 have slightly different definitions even around them between states. So we'd be in favor of a standardized question or series of questions in that respect too.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, that makes the point perfect, right, about the slight variations. Okay. All right, thank you very much. All right, Julianne.
Okay. Our next agenda item is if there's anything from the Office of EMS.
I don't think Eric was able to make the call today.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move into open forum then. So if there are any concerns or questions that we didn't get to on this V3 implementation call, please feel free to bring those up at this time.
Hey, Julianne, this is Laurel. While people are thinking of their additional items, can we scroll back up to that call compliance information so I can just reiterate a few points for everyone so that there's no confusion? Okay, so everyone who needs to be on this call for compliance, you got to make sure that your name and your company is entered into the participants list in Zoom correctly. We take attendance 10 minutes after the call starts. So that was like half an hour ago. If you joined after 9:10, you'll need to send a chat message to one of the NEMSIS TAC folks on the call. Bridget's a good choice, and let her know who you are and that you joined late so that she can make sure you're counted. If you join late, it's your responsibility to let us know that you're here so we can make sure to count you. If you are on this call and you didn't join the webinar, you just called in, that's okay, but we don't know who you are because you just show up as a phone number. So if this is what you've done, please write an email to us after the call is over and say, hey, my name is so-and-so from such and such company, and I called in with this phone number. We will verify that that number called into the call, and we will give you credit for being here. If you have any questions, feel free to bring them up, ask us in the chat, send us emails afterwards. I should have the website updated with new tracking numbers for today's call within an hour of the call ending. If you notice that your percentage is not right or something seems off, you are welcome to email me, and I will check our list and do what I can to verify that we have the correct numbers for you. And the last one, if your company is tested, if your software product is tested as a separate company, even though you have a parent company, that's great, but that means that your product needs to be represented independently. If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to ask them in the chat. Unmute yourselves or send us an email. Thanks.
Thanks, Laurel, for covering that. Are there any questions about the participation compliance or other issues or concerns for this call this morning?
Hey, Julianne, this is Juan. I was going to ask about the software vendors that don't normally participate. How were they notified about the participation?
Laurel, do you want to take that or you want me to?
Sure. We had someone on our team attempt to reach out to every software vendor on the list and get in contact with someone to let them know that compliance requirements have changed. Ultimately, though, I feel like if you're following a standard, you should probably pay a little bit of attention to the standard. So we're hoping that everyone checks the website, is in communication with their state, and is kind of paying a little bit of attention to what's going on at a national level. But we did attempt to reach out to every vendor that is currently compliant on 3.4 or higher, I guess.
Okay. I just wanted to know in case one of the vendors asked.
Are you able to cross-reference ones who you haven't been able to reach with ones where you're not getting, whether you're getting data from them or not as well, just to, as another avenue potentially of contacting them? So if they only have a few clients in Florida, for example, maybe one would have a better contact for them than you guys.
So
we haven't hit any. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Julianne. You have a better answer, I'm sure.
We haven't hit any dead ends yet, but that's a great idea. We haven't cross-referenced the data submissions for the vendors that aren't participating. So I appreciate that suggestion, David. Thank you.
This is Ann in Arizona. The other thing is, as a state, I know that it's not our responsibility necessarily, but if you look at this list, if the states know about it, I know who's reporting to me, and I already have a couple, well, maybe just one vendor that I know is, and they're not on here. And so I actually did reach out to you guys saying, hey, make sure these people are on the list. I realize it's not our job to necessarily hunt them down, but at the same time, I want my EMS agencies to be successful. I want the vendors to be successful, and I want the data to just keep going without having a headache. And so that's another suggestion, just an idea. You could also ask the states to check the list, see who's not calling in, and kind of, it's an idea to get on your vendor if you want to.
That's a really good suggestion, Ann. Thank you. Great way to support that data coming in from your agencies that are using very specific vendors and even the smaller vendors. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, it's Mark from California. I just kind of wanted to give a heads up to the vendors and let everybody know what is coming down the pike in California. We're getting a lot of failures from Schematrons that are coming in, and files are failing. So we're considering implementing a process that if we get more than 1 or 2 failures from a particular agency or vendor and there's known Schematron failures, we're either going to have a meeting with the vendor and the NHTSA and the agency, or we'll just turn them all off until they can figure out how to implement a Schematron. There's really no reason at a state level, if we have a Schematron, that we should get any failures at all. So I've been told by some agencies that they either don't know how to turn them on, they can't get help, or their vendor's not capable of running more than 1 Schematron at a time. So that's something that's in the works for us. We need to limit the amount of time that's being spent tracking down calls that are failing when it should be caught at the sender and not at the recipient.
All right, we've got a question on the chat. Are we supposed to be validating the Schematron before sending the information to the states? So shouldn't that Schematron already be validated?
But if they're not running it and checking it before they send it, then it's passing through and we're getting the failures on our end. Each agency or each person that's submitting to any state should be running the state Schematron, and that way catching any errors at the time of creation, not when it gets to us. We should only be getting clean. Well, that comes back to the same report you guys were showing, was the number of calls that were coming in that had Schematron errors or failures. If we were doing our job at our level, you should get none. And maybe occasionally something will jump in, but not hundreds a day.
Yeah, that's true. This is quite the NEMSIS tech. That's absolutely true. And the answer to John's questions on the chat are both yes. So yeah, there continue to be records that are sneaking through. We kind of have a handle on the bulk of where those are coming from. So yeah, you're right. Once in a while, something's going to slip through. That's just the nature of the randomness of ether. But there's clearly some that are systematic, and I think Mark's making a good point here. We're actively working with a couple of software products where we see this happening a lot, but still, John's absolutely correct. We should be validating both state and national Schematron files as they leave systems and as they're arriving at states.
So on that, does the state get notified if a vendor sends something and it doesn't match up to the Schematron that the state has given?
Yeah, if you're asking me, this is Mark with California. Yeah, we have an import history file, and it shows us what was successful and what failed. And so an image friend is our vendor, so we can go in and look at any point in time and see, how many failed in the last 24 hours, last 7 days. We can nail it down by a particular agency. It's not easy to nail down by a vendor because you don't receive calls by a vendor. You receive them from an agency, but within that's the detail that shows us exactly why it failed. And while there's warnings, warnings are okay. That's acceptable. But I'm talking about hard failures that just cause it to not to be, or rather to be rejected. And then we either have to get back a hold of the sender and say, hey, these all rejected, or at the end of the year when we do an audit, our counts are off. And the reason the counts are off is because all these records failed.
But Mark, I think if it fails to export from the system, the agency system, because it fails, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if it fails to export from the agency, you never even see that in that thing because it never even hits your system.
Yeah. So from a sending standpoint, if any agency that sends a record, it should also indicate on there that it failed to be sent because of the same errors. If I'm understanding your question. So if I'm sending a record to the state and the state fails, or the record fails, then it should come up on their report as a failure.
Yeah, I think that's part of what Mark is saying, right? If a file gets to Mark in California and it fails, then that either indicates that the software didn't run the state Schematron file at the field level because it should never have left the field system, or something else is wrong. Yeah, so you're right, Ann. You wouldn't see them, we wouldn't see them, because if it was working correctly, they wouldn't leave the field product until they're corrected.
So just one more comment on that, and that is, I have been told by, and I don't remember who it was, I could go back and look, but I don't think it's relative, and I wouldn't say it anyway. I don't I've been told that there's a couple vendors that can only check a single schematron, or they can check two, you know, and I'm not sure if the standard says you need to be able to check unlimited or if you need to be able to check more than one. I don't know how the standard is written, but they definitely need to be able to check the national and at least the state simultaneously.
Hey,
Yeah, the standard says that they need to be able to deploy multiple schematron files. The compliance testing process tests 2 schematron files.
And
Thanks, Josh.
This is Adam. I also know a state that has 2 at the state level. So yeah, to your point that it should be able to support multiple passes. But the other thing I wanted to mention is, coming off, I'm stating the obvious here about the scenario, but it could also be the fact that there was a schematron release, and I'm not talking about California necessarily or self, but thinking through the scenario, the schematron was released. Announcement was made on NEMSIS on that Friday email. It was just missed and not caught for a couple of weeks, or that the turnaround is too quick to get it into some compiled solutions. So on the client side, it seems like valid. It passed the schematron because it's an old version, and by the time it gets up to the state, it's invalid because of the date. So I mean, that's to answer anyone else's concerns that may not understand the general process.
So I have some concerns about what you just said, Adam.
Sure.
During compliance testing, I asked people to implement a schematron on the fly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't have anyone, I have very rarely had anyone who can't complete that in a 1-hour call. And if they can't complete it in a 1-hour call, I have some questions about their
sure.
schematron.
And we can too, but that's the testing, right? They can do it, but on the daily, day-to-day basis. So I just outlined 2 scenarios. I'll get picky now. If an announcement is made Friday afternoon on that NEMSIS email about what changed, right? And it takes place on Tuesday, someone might be out on vacation. The turnaround to compile and quality assurance a schematron that's to be made active in 2 weeks might not get into the development cycle. That kind of thing. Yes, you can, but technically, maybe the turnaround. There's probably unlimited amount of scenarios that could explain why something might seem valid on one side, but by the time it gets to the state, it's invalid. I'm not saying that there's room for improvement, but that can certainly happen.
So from your perspective, what you really need is effective dates on those schematrons with enough time to implement them.
Definitely. Yeah, the versioning thing has been, we brought up at the national, I'm not going to go into the tirade, but yeah, we brought up at the last meeting. I think one other state I talked about, make sure you look at E×03 and put an effective date on there. Some states have done it already. I've seen it implemented. So yeah, I mean, that goes a long way.
Yeah, so I'm getting questions about this too. The only way I can commit something to Git is with the commit data is when I commit it. So files show up with the date of when they were put into Git rather than the effective date. Does anyone know of a way to handle this while still maintaining it in a version controlled repository? I've told people to put effective dates in the title element. I've put them in the commit notes when I have the effective dates available. How can we do a better job of conveying this information?
Yeah, that'd be a fun discussion point for maybe some other call, or I don't want to take too much time, but.
Yeah, it's a great point, and we can certainly include that on another call when we have more time. I think it's a great question.
Yeah, so we can prep some ideas and can understand Laurel's ask. What other states have implemented them, versioning. I mean, I know Virginia did a nice little thing where they said like, hey, April 1st, we're implementing the schematron change, and they announced it last week. I go, that's a good advance warning.
This is Josh. I know we have had some discussions about the best way to communicate effective dates for both schematron files and state DataSet file updates. So yeah, I could look through my notes as well, see what we've talked about.
Some systems also are self-hosted, so even if the vendor makes the change in their product overall, some agencies have to update of their own accord, and that may or may not happen.
Yep, there's another one. Yep.
So we've got a comment in the chat as well that Alabama does a great job with this via email as well, and they include an effective date and a detailed change log. So that's another state who's being proactive with that.
Well, I think as a state, we need to give vendors at a minimum of 30 days notice, and I'm sure they would like 60 if we could provide it. And I don't think that is unreasonable to expect, unless it's an emergency thing that is out of everybody's control, and then you just kind of, it's a free-for-all. But I think as a state, we should be responsible for at least 30 days and 60 whenever possible. So that's kind of the rule that I try to follow, or whenever possible.
This is Ann in Arizona. I do 2 weeks, to be fair, but a lot of times it's adding destinations. So it's stuff agencies want. I only do it every 3 months, but I only give about 2 weeks notice because I try to compile everything and send it out. If I had to wait 60 days, people would be sending things to generic hospital codes for months, and that wouldn't work for me. But if I had a major change where I locked down a bunch of rules and made things a much more, I don't know what the word is, just harder to pass, then yes, I would give more time.
I think you made a good point there, though, that's, if it's a regular thing that it's expected that every 3 months you're going to push an update, I think that's reasonable in its own way.
We have another chat comment. Having a change log assists in the process as often. We want to make sure agencies are aware of Schematron changes in layperson terms to reduce validation errors before sending. Yeah. So the change log is really helpful as well. This is a great topic. We'll add to a future agenda and go down this road a little bit further. I know we talked about it also at the annual meeting, so I think we're coming closer to some good consensus on that.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to add to the agenda because I know I've learned things that help it go more smoothly over doing this and having things not go right. And I would love to hear from other states what they've found helpful, and maybe even vendors what they would find helpful in addition to, I do a change log, but what else would you guys, that kind of thing. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, the source of a kind of a white paper idea on like how to best implement Schematron changes from emergency fixes to, some kind of schedule to how NEMSIS announces the changes and change log and versioning. It's a whole bunch of stuff.
All right, any other questions, concerns? Great conversation. Thank you so much for participating. Our next meeting will be February 26th, same time, same place. Look for that reminder to come out on Google Groups. Please let us know if there are topics that you want added to an agenda, and we can look at scheduling those. We appreciate your participation and your taking time out of your busy schedules. Thank you so much, and everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.